I'm not in the greatest mind space, but hopefully we'll manage. Hello witches, and welcome back to A Coven of Two, where we discuss witchcraft and activism. You can call me Isha by pronouns as she, they. And in today's video, we're gonna take a look at really my own vision and beliefs in a way as to why I do not do baneful magic. Despite what I say at the end of my videos, I do not actively do hexes. Why don't I do it? Well, we'll go through a journey as to where my values and where my energy is. We're gonna talk about karma, we're gonna talk about my experience being raised in a country like Italy and how much that affects my decision of not doing baneful magic. We're gonna talk about my vision of what is balance in the world in terms of energy and my understanding of energy economics, so to speak. So if that sounds interesting, buckle up because we're gonna talk about baneful magic. Before we get started, let me remind you that not only I've opened a coffee where you can get tarot readings with me and you can get a tarot reading for the entire year ahead until the end of January. It's a 9 spread, I calculate your ear card, there's everything and more. But also on the 11th of February, it's a Sunday and we're gonna do another tarot workshop here in Cardiff at Umbrella. So if you were there at the first, if you weren't and you have time because this time is gonna be on a weekend in the afternoon, join in. It's gonna be held by myself and Raven and we'd love to have you there. I would start this with karma, the rule of 3. Isha, you don't do baneful magic because you're afraid it will come back to you? No, that's absolutely not the reason why. I don't think that, at least that's not my worry. I think from what I understand that the rule of 3 exists and has been developed in Wicca, and to my perception it's a development of the reasons why religion had a reason to exist in the Middle Ages and in antiquity. Because when you don't have an understanding of a lot of things that then have been explained by science, and you still need to give morals to a populace, you need to appeal to something higher. So the idea that you don't do bad because otherwise it comes back to you, it's something useful in that sense. Yes, ideally people don't do bad things for any other reason that is not fearing personal consequence. That requires emotional and intelligence development that not necessarily everybody has, especially in antiquity when life was harder on some things. So I do not think necessarily that that's a bad thing, but that's an evolution of something that I don't think it's relevant in modern times anymore. So I do not necessarily believe that if I were to do baneful magic or hex or curse someone, I would be worried about protecting myself because if they send it back or if it comes back to me because the universe sends it back to me, that is not one of the reasons. I genuinely believe from what I've seen so far of life that the world is in balance or tries to keep itself in balance, and balance is not fairness. Balance is there's as much darkness as there is light. As much as that's not, I'm trying to move away from those terms. Charlie in Radical Tarot mentions that it can be problematic to talk about shadows and darkness and light because those terms are intrinsically related to colonialism and racism, therefore. Very good point, Charlie. In this case, it's just there's literally, I shouldn't use light and dark, there's good and bad. And what you get out of it is an average. So the world is not amazing, is not always on top, is not always love and joy and celebration, is that and it's bad stuff. And ultimately, if you look over a long amount of time enough, you get an average. I have a feeling that that's what the world is. Complete personal, unverified gnosis. But that is to give an idea of one of the main reasons I think people would think, oh, I don't do Baneful magic. No, it's not about karma, it's not about that for me. What is it about for me? Energy economics. So let's talk about energy economics. Is that a thing? Is that something that I invented? I don't know. So in my perception, again, of the world, because of the limits that we have, mostly physically, because we are in bodies. Actually, I would love to hear what people like Ivy, the occultist, or Olivia, the Witch of Wonderlust, would say about this, because I remember seeing their vlog that they did together, and Ivy saying something along the lines of, not quite I can't wait to be dead, but you know, I wouldn't mind, because evidently she knows what's there after and she knows what she would do. And actually Astra told me something similar when we first started to speak Astrologica. And that is something extremely fascinating to me. So I have this general perception that the moment that we are not limited by a physical material body, energy and everything would be on a scale that we don't have the comprehension. Being limited by a body that exists within the laws of physics, it reminds me of the second law of thermodynamics, that you don't destroy anything, you don't create anything, but energy moves and transmutes, so to speak. Nulla si crea, nulla si distrugge, tutto si modifica. And that vision of there is a finite amount of energy and work that in my lifetime, just for the time that I exist, I can do. Possibly also because of, you know, part is my OCD, part is my thanatophobia, but I have a very clear perception of my time in this form is limited. Even if, like, we don't know how much, maybe we're talking decades, maybe, you know, maybe medicine is getting so much better that we'll get to 150 years. But that is still limited, beginning and end. And let's say that you have an amount of 10 energy per day to use in anything. I cannot foresee a situation in which I would use even 1 unit of that energy to do bad if I can use all 10 of them to do good, basically. My idea is I do prefer to spend energy to better myself and the people I love than to have to focus that energy and lose it and waste it in making someone's life worse. That is just not good energy economics to my perception of the world. Now, in case you haven't seen my last video, I am going to Trojan horse a bit with the Palestinian situation here. So in that case, you would apply this way. Is it good enough to hope for a ceasefire at this point? I don't know how much you follow the situation. I really hope that you've started to. But basically the level of destroyment of lives and places that has happened in Gaza and in the West Bank is such that if everything stopped now, there still needs to be a lot of energy put in then making the situation better, because lives have been lost, generations have been lost, hospitals, buildings have been lost. So there needs to be energy also put in there to do good, to rebuild. From a bigger perspective, is it good enough to obtain a ceasefire? So should we consider blocking, freezing, hexing? And somebody, I think, recently made a comment on a post that I did about Palestine, saying basically that I light a candle and I hope that the IDF, IOF, more realistically, soldiers get nightmares about what they do. And that's actually what made me think of, oh, I need to talk about Baneful magic maybe. Not because I would have anything against, again, that morally, but it's just a matter of energy economics. If I had that energy to do that, I would definitely spend it hoping, sending protection to the people in Gaza, to Palestinians. I would, on a bigger scale, I would think we need not only a ceasefire, but we need to pressure governments, especially in my case the British government, so that it can open safe routes for asylum seekers from those situations. Here, not only Britain has an insane responsibility for the situation in Gaza, but it also is treating shamelessly people that are coming here to try and find refuge from what they are escaping. Recently, not only we have the absurd idea of if you try to get here, we'll send you to Rwanda, which is against any international law, but our Tory government is still trying to do that, despite every judge saying no, every airline saying we're not going to give you the airplanes, we're not going to get the level of bad publicity for you to deport people to Rwanda. But yeah, they do that fucking stuff, and they still refuse to create safe routes for people to come here. They're starting to say, oh no, being LGBT and being prosecuted in countries where it's illegal to be LGBT is not good enough to come here. So they're basically telling LGBT people, mask better, lie better, act better, pretend that you are straight, and you will not have to move. In that context, not only they are absolute fuckers that deserve all the bad things that happen to them, but if I were to put my energy in something, it would be in gathering enough votes to go against the Rwanda bill, gathering enough votes, or hoping that someone has the strength to put through a law that then proposes a new way to open new routes that are safe for people to come here, allowing people to ask for asylum and get documents in their own country, not that they have to go through this journey of hope and lose everything and spend everything and indeed put the money in the hands of people that are treating them insanely badly. So with this example, I hope that it gives the idea of, again, it's not a morality issue for me, it's a matter of economy. If I have limited amount of energy, which I do because I am limited by a physical body, to spend, I will always try to spend it in bettering things for someone rather than making them worse for someone else. And that bettering can literally just be, say, I have a very, very bad ex, which I don't have to imagine. Would I want to ex them? If I were to ever spend energy in that direction, I would genuinely try to cast a spell that gives protection to anyone that ever meets them and lets them see through the person that they are so that they don't get hurt. My worry would always be, and most for protection, but not for attack. I don't know, maybe I'm very disillusioned about humans. I don't think that some humans can just learn. It doesn't matter how bad things can get for them, they will not learn if they are like narcissists and stuff like that. That is my view on that though. I'm not saying you should feel the same or do the same, I'm just explaining myself. Basically going back to the idea that the world, the universe keeps itself in balance with good and bad things. Bad things, bad people will keep being around. What I think is worth spending energy in is in creating enough good things to try and keeping that in balance. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm pretty positive that there are parts of my upbringing being related and having happened in Italy that are one of the reasons why I have this vision about the world. If you've seen my video on how it was being raised within Italy and naturally within Italian folk magic, you might have seen my very quick and condensed socio-cultural description of what Italy is and how it got there. So very, very quickly, Italy is a very, very young country, despite the perception that we might have of it. You know, the Renaissance and all those kind of things. Italy has actually been a country, a unified country, since 1861, so in the last 160 years. Before it was all little city-states. And it's been like that for 1600 years, since the fall of Rome, which was in around 400 current era. So this perception of Italy having always been that and existing since the time of Rome, not quite. It's been very fragmented and it feels that. So that is probably one of the reasons why Italy's identity is very fragmented. There's not such a thing as an Italian identity. And the mentality is still very, very narrow-minded in the sense that you need to look after your own, and everybody could be wanting to take something from you. You have to defend yourself from them. And I understand anthropologically why that might be the case, and it's something that I had been exposed since being a child. It was something so common to talk shit about people and being worried about them being jealous and then consequentially being preemptively jealous. Is arrivism a word in English? Arrivism is a word, but I think it's better to say that it's unscrupulous ambition. That is very much what Italy does. And I have seen so much energy wasted wishing someone bad, and that's basically why the malocchio is such an Italian thing, rather than spending that energy to better oneself. And the prime example of that, in my case, was my mother. My grandparents were amazing people, keeping themselves to themselves. Not one person in their village would have had a bad word to say about them. I think my mother never quite tolerated the fact that she was a baby boomer and she wanted more from life than being a farmer. And that grew a level of resentment towards her parents, because in her vision she was born being a farmer and had to resent them for that, and towards anyone that had anything more. She had such a mania for seeking out any status symbol and trying to get for herself whatever kind of thing that she saw people that she thought had more authority, more value, more wealth, without understanding why. And I remember that shit-talking people and being jealous of them was such a fundamental subject of discussion between people that I don't quite know how to explain this if you have never lived in Italy. I hope that maybe it's a thing about a very small mentality of a very small village, so people needed to keep themselves entertained. I don't know. But when looking at it critically, it's scary, and it's entire lives spent being angry at what you don't have and being angry at those who do, which is so bizarre to me. And don't get me wrong, I'm an anti-capitalist, so I am kind of the person that would say eat the rich. But again, between taking down billionaires or Hexing Bezos and doing a spell that for social justice brings more people to a higher place than they are, to a more equal place, the latter will be the one that I focus on. Which takes us to discuss the accidental tagline of my channel. You might have noticed that since the first video that I've made, something that I tend to say when I close the videos is, until next time, I hope that we can hex the patriarchy together. And rightfully, some people, when I first gave the idea of this video, were like, well, how do you explain your tagline then? Very reasonable. And the short explanation is, to me, hexing the patriarchy is doing things that take it down. And rather than, I don't know, hoping for white, cis, wealthy, het, able men to die a precocious death, I much rather they sit back while women get elevated, LGBT people get elevated, trans people get elevated, and they just have to sit and fucking take it. So in that sense, with the economy energy that I was talking before, even hexing the patriarchy is the final consequence of having made things better for people that are marginalized. And I might be biased because I'm one of them, but I genuinely believe that that's how you take down things. Going back to what I mentioned about if the world keeps things in balance, bad things will be there. But what I can do is elevate more and more and more good things and make things better for them. So basically I don't hex the patriarchy in I want them to die and us to take their place, because I want to reduce inequality, I don't want to flip it. So you know what the patriarchy tends to say about, those feminists just want to do to us what we've done to them, which then begs the question, why is it bad to be treated like a minority if you're so worried that you'll be treated like one? But you know, that's what I mean. I don't want to do to them what they have done to us. I want equity, which in a grand scheme of things should matter even more than equality, because you don't give everyone the same thing and hope for the best. You understand that everybody comes from a different level of marginalization, and you give them what they need to then be all on the same level. Not even editing yet, but I remembered, and we're on the phone now. The Hexing the Patriarchy sentence actually comes, and it's a citation of the book by Ariel Gore, Hexing the Patriarchy. And in there she has a few different spells, one for each letter of the alphabet, and half of them are baneful, and the other half are basically how to better the situation. And possibly from that, I've started to focus on, if I only have one thing to do, if I have limited energy, that's what I'm gonna do. So that's also the thing. I'm linking the book downstairs, because that's the reason why I even thought about the sentence to hex the patriarchy. So thank you, Ariel. That is basically a trip in the mind and the principles and the ideas of an activist witch. So if you were wondering, why do you still talk about hexing the patriarchy without hoping that we're not going to say things, because lately when I've said things, things matter. So even just saying things about bad things happening to people might make things happen. I need to be careful about that recently. I feel like Ma Mary in Dairy Girls.
Drop dead, you spiteful old hag!
I need to be careful about what I say. Which, by the way, it's been an option for the last couple of polls for the next videos. If you'd like me to talk about manifestation and the kind of things that I've bizarrely manifested even before officially practicing witchcraft, that's one of the options for the videos to come in the next weeks. If after watching this video you go to the community tab, you will see that there is a new poll, and with that you can decide what video is going to be out next Monday. Pretty neat, isn't it? And until next Monday, I do hope that we can hex the patriarchy together, because there's need for it, and now you know how personally I do that, by elevating those who just take the beat from it. Tea? I really wasn't in the mindset to do a video today. Shit is going down, but I am zen about it. I genuinely am. And that's one of those things that makes me feel like attract likes. Not that if you try not to think about the Palestinian genocide, then all of a sudden your life will be kittens and marshmallow, because again, if you're standing in shit, looking at the sun does only so much. Not. But it's the way that you take life. You cannot change some things that happen, but you can change the way that you deal with them, which in a nutshell is the reason that therapy exists. And you know, there's also shit life syndrome. Shit things keep on happening, and there's only so much that you can take, and you can also say fuck off life for a second. But recently, I think that one of the main reasons why I've been blessed is that shit is still happening, but somehow my brain chemistry, for lack of a better word, has got me in a more zen, accepting place. We're only here for a limited amount of time. We might as well make the best out of it. Thanatophobia speaks.